Welcome to the Get Emergent podcast. The Get Emergent podcast guides leaders to creatively strengthen relationships and improve performance of their leadership and those that they lead. We like to provide concepts and ideas that you can turn into pragmatic experiments to help you develop your higher potential in your work and your leadership. And we hope you're going to find some better practice or something to apply right in your work. I'm Bill Berthel.
And I'm Jeremiah Polson. It's good to be back with you, Bill. And there's been something coming up here lately for me that I wanted to bring up with you. There's a bit of a theme that's been showing up recently in my coaching conversations, in discovery sessions that we do with organizations, as well as in large group facilitation. And it's this conversation, this theme around, it could be perceived as a lack of talent in the talent pool, but that's not what it is. What it is there's people choosing to not step into manager or leader roles. And thus, the managers that are in place or the administrators are looking for those to promote and not finding them. And they're saying, essentially, what I hear is, we're looking for talent to promote. We're looking for people to step into these roles, and we can't find them. They're not out there. And I don't think that's the problem. I don't think that's the issue. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I'm thinking the issue is people are intentionally choosing not to go that route. So that's kind of the topic I wanted to bring up. What is keeping people from stepping into those roles? How can we create maybe a different atmosphere for it to happen? And maybe we're at an impasse here as a culture. What do you think?
I'm going to, definitely take a stand here and say there is no shortage of talent. That's not a thing. Right? It's really not. There might be a different set of motives. I think it's, I don't have to think about it. There's a lot of research already being done in this space where fewer people, and I don't really want to turn this into a generational conversation, but particularly millennials and Gen Z are pursuing leadership roles less. They have many reasons for this, many motivations to avoid leadership roles. We've sometimes on this podcast have talked about the kind of boiling down or netting out human motivation to simply two different things. You're either approaching something or avoiding something. And I think that actually plays out really well in most human behavior is we avoid something we don't want, or we want to, put distance between us and that thing, or we're attracted to something, so we approach it. We want that thing. The statistics are showing there are less people in the workforce that are attracted to leadership roles. And there's some key reasons for this declining interest.
I think right away, one key reason, without even looking at reports, is the fact that people see managers out there and they go, I don't want to do that. I don't want to suffer like they're suffering, especially after post-COVID, when you see a lot of the first line of layoffs maybe coming back was that middle management role. So what used to be the first step in was the first boot out. And there's some kind of tension around, what does that look like for me? Why would I step into that if the risk is so high?
Yeah, I think we're not throwing any leaders under the bus here, but maybe we're talking about poor management examples. Unfortunately, if some folks have less than attractive examples of leadership in their network, in their workplaces, seeing current leaders overwhelmed or overstressed or whatever that looks like that's less attractive, for sure. Yeah. Poor management examples, I think, is a key indicator. I can go back in my own history and think, there was definitely a time where I did not want a leadership role. It wasn't because of poor management examples. I was lucky. I was in an organization where there were really good leaders around. I was actually fearful of having that much responsibility. Like, it was like, whoa, that's a big job. I don't know if I would want that. Some of it to me boiled down to this idea of, like, not that I would be blamed, but the term that I've been reading about is like called blame risk. I don't know if I want the risk of like being blamed for something big going wrong, or really I wasn't ready for that accountability, that responsibility. So it was not attractive to me. So I avoided some leadership opportunities, earlier on in my career because it looked too big and too heavy.
It makes sense if you're seeing the potential. I want to be careful, but at the same time, once you step into leadership, you are putting yourself in a position of responsibility.
You are.
And so if a leader has demonstrated to you, let's say that younger Bill Berthel, a leader has demonstrated to you in that space, man, this is heavy. If you want to take this role, you better be ready for it kind of attitude, then it even further compounds that fear, that idea that, man, I don't know if I can handle that. I don't think I can. It doesn't really empower you to move into that role, right?
Absolutely. Whatever that is, if it's the fear of failing in that, or it looks like it's a lot of responsibility or accountability, I think that's very real. Maybe I'm projecting here because I do relate to that to some of my own experience. I think that speaks to a readiness as well. So I think that's okay if someone's not ready. They may not be ready yet to
Mm,
aspire to that kind of accountability. There's another key reason that seems to come to the top of most research and most lists that I think has me more concerned, and that's the burnout and the mental health issues we see around leadership.
mm. Is
Um,
that related to the kind of burn candle at both ends, always on
yeah,
culture of
yeah.
leadership?
Exactly. Having to do more with less, perhaps. The stress and anxiety around being the one to surface difficult conversations or, having to, I don't want to be the guy that has to fire somebody.
Hmm.
That's a hard job.
Yeah.
The best advice I had ever gotten, I reported directly to the president of the organization. She was an amazing leader. And I went to her when I was already in a leadership, pretty high level leadership role, and I'm like, I'm not sure how much longer I want to do this. I really don't like firing people. And she
Mm,
looked me right in the eye and she said, "That's exactly the reason I want you doing this. The day you say you want
mm.
to fire people and you're comfortable with this, I don't want you in the role."
Yeah.
And so it's a weird both and of balancing it is a stressful, as that one example, it might not just be firing somebody. It's stressful to be the catalyst for the really tough conversation, or you
Yeah.
need to be the person to, right, bring up those more difficult ideas or challenge something. Yeah, that's real. That could lead to some burnout or mental health challenges such as anxiety, stress, and maybe worse.
Yeah. And I love that story, not because you got to fire somebody, but
No.
because, and you hated it, but because it solicits another thought. And I'm curious, before you took that role, was it clear that you were going to have to be a person who fired people in that role?
Yeah, in that role, it was. The previous leadership role I had, it was not.
Mm,
And I can really remember that very first, and it was before needing to terminate someone. What wasn't clear to me that I had a role in responsibility for someone else's performance.
mm.
Like I really wasn't thinking about that as a really young early leader. I was
Yeah.
more excited about, cool, we'll get to do more with more people and I'll have influence and share some of my expertise that I got to grow up to that point. That was all exciting. So that had me like saying yes to leadership.
Yeah.
But then when there were some performance challenges, it's like, oh, I'm the guy that has to have this conversation. Didn't realize that in this particular case, that did turn into, oh my gosh, I'm the person that's going to need to let this person go.
Yeah.
And so, no, I really was not thinking about it or highly aware of that. Now, whose fault? Mine and my leaders, but let's not talk about that fault. It's really like, ooh, I wasn't aware of what it took.
Right. And that's part of why I ask, because I think that we could do ourselves a favor on this, not to jump to
Yeah.
solutions for folks, but there's something about knowing what the role entails that you don't typically think about ahead of time so that you're prepared when you get into that role. And whether you're talking about an individual contributor role, we're really good at doing this in job interviews when
Yeah.
we're talking about, okay, what does this job entail? But when it's an internal promotion, when somebody's next in line for that open role, I think there's a lot of unspoken parts of roles that we don't get the chance to think through, talk through, that we may not even know at first, but with an intentional, thoughtful apprenticeship, with an intentional, thoughtful mentor space where somebody gets the chance to even ride along with a newer manager to see what it's really like.
Yeah.
Now they get the chance to go, oh, wait, you got to have that conversation with somebody. I didn't realize that was part of this role. You've got to do annual reviews. Oh, okay. Now I can make more of an informed choice on the matter.
I love the ride along analogy. I mean, what comes to my head is, and probably from watching too many police movies or police TV shows, right? The rookie gets a ride along or a civilian gets a ride along in the police car, and you get
Yeah.
real firsthand, experience, or at least a front seat to the experience, so you're more informed on what that is. How might we do some more realistic ride-alongs for aspiring leaders in the organization? And I think to have a really safe off ramp for those that become highly aware, to be able
Yes.
to say, "Oh, thanks for the ride along. It validated that I'm not ready, or I don't want this kind of leadership role. Where else in the organization might I add value? I can become a subject matter expert over here in this thing, or I can, whatever it is. There's a safe off ramp for me, so I can have a career."
Yeah, and you know what? That brings up another issue that I think keeps people from stepping into those roles or keeps people bouncing from one organization to
Yeah.
another, one location to another is the only way forward is a manager position, is a supervisor position. And if somebody doesn't either see themselves as that yet or never will, if that's the only way forward, they're going to bounce. They're going to find, or they may, right? I don't want to block everybody into that space, but somebody might say, well, the ceiling is at this point of development. I don't want to go into a manager role. What else is here for me? So, how do we exhort, how do we celebrate alternative development plans and give people the choice for management or developing a more impactful individual contributor role, right? That's
Absolutely.
equally as powerful for the organization, highlighting impact over building the empire of the team, right? And I don't mean any disrespect to the idea of a manager for sure. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of organizations doing some version of that in some areas. It's not uncommon for a really high performing salesperson to have the status and recognition and perhaps the compensation that a manager or a leader might have, right? So there can be parallel, comparable career paths. We see
Mm-hmm.
that in high tech, subject matter experts in technology, whether that be an engineer or a programmer, or pick your role. Those high level skills are very valuable to an organization, so they can have the prestige, the status, the influence, and the compensation
Compensation.
that a
Yeah.
leader might
Right.
have. And that can be very, very healthy for an organization. The other effect that happens there is we'll have people who want to lead in leadership roles, not just feeling like it's the only choice for growth. I think most of the reports are suggesting it's about 1 in 4, like 25%
Mm-hmm.
of current leaders are reluctant or really don't want their role. Most of those leaders, when you get into the conversation, you get into the research, you find out they got into those roles because there was nowhere else to go to grow.
I love that you said that. Let me read this to you. I read this in an article recently. And on that point of like those who want to be managers,
Yeah,
this is HBR Harvard Business Review article by Colleen Adler. I don't know if
yeah.
we have to cite that stuff, but
I think it's great when we do.
yeah. February 10th just came out. We're recording this around February. One passage of this says, when a manager doesn't actually want to be a manager, they lack authentic commitment to the engagement in the role. This can spell the difference between success and failure. Analysis from May 2024 Gartner survey of 984 senior leaders at mid-level managers found that highly engaged managers are nearly 4 times more likely to be high enterprise contributors, more than twice as likely to have high intent to stay, and 3 times more likely to exhibit high discretionary effort compared to their less engaged counterparts.
Mm,
Now,
yeah.
now my question is, did the management position come and then those characteristics? Or was it somebody who had strong enterprise contributions, somebody who was twice as likely to stay, and somebody who was 3 times more likely to exhibit high discretionary effort before they ever got the management role,
Well, yeah.
right?
So
Like,
the chicken and the egg.
yeah, it's the chicken and the egg. Is it causal that the management position created those characteristics? I personally don't think so.
Mm-mm.
I think that there's something about that person, those people saying there's some staying power with them that you
Mm-mm.
can identify ahead of time that says, I want a higher level of commitment to this and I'm willing to step into the discomfort of it before they get into that role. And they're saying, I'm
Yeah.
willing to do it, you know?
I'm sure if those folks that felt more informed or more at choice, meaning, well, the only choice I have is to go in a leadership role, otherwise I can't grow, isn't the kind of choice I'm talking about.
Right.
That choice to lead is I'm interested in leading. I'm interested in doing more through and with others, not being an individual contributor or subject matter expert necessarily in whatever the technology or the service we provide. My guess is there's more staying power there, right? And much less reluctancy when there's more choice, when there's more agency.
I would 100% agree because I think you could run those statistics for the people that have been around that are highly impactful individual contributors that are well compensated. They had the choice to be in that position. They have that staying power. They have that contribution to the organization, but they don't need to be in a manager role because they get to choose where they are on the team, in the project, on the role. Agency and the autonomy to choose where you want to be, huge topic that I could run on for a while on the importance of it. I just think it's so vastly important that people have that choice
Yeah.
informed by the reality of the position that they're being asked to fill or asking to fill, right? Give them not just the information, but also the training ahead of time before they get into that role to know how to handle it.
So one of the catalysts for this topic to come up was actually a question my son asked me because he knows the work I do. He's 15 now, and the work I do, he knows, I work with leaders and his language. I try to build better bosses, right? Which I love. But he asked me, he said, so, we got on the topic of like the longevity of jobs. Is AI taking over some jobs and what jobs might be more safe than some others, currently? Because he's starting to think about college and he's starting to think about what he might do in his life. And he said, so, like, how stable is your job? What if nobody wants to lead anymore? And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, that's really interesting because there's maybe a little bit of a trend happening here. So we got into that discussion, right? So I
Yeah.
love that question. What if nobody wants to lead anymore?
Mm. Yeah, it's funny because it brings me back to how we define leadership too.
Yeah, yeah,
If leadership is influence, then everybody's leading somewhere. So the
absolutely.
question is not if, but how and who. Yeah, that's good. If Will's listening,
Well,
good, good
I don't
challenge.
think we're going to be without leadership, right?
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think leadership will happen, but we might be in this trend of a small dip, right? Where roughly 1 in 4, again, not to make this generational, but we do need to see how many younger people want to come into leadership,
Yeah.
and there's a decline there. I think as leaders, we have a responsibility. I know when I got into leadership in the late, well, really actually kind of in the early to mid 90s, the CEO of the organization said, your number one job as a leader is actually building more leaders. And that has
Hmm.
always stuck with me. And there's
Yeah.
something about that I think we all have as a role, whether you're in leadership development or not, you're in leadership development. If you
Hmm.
are a leader, you are in leadership development in your organization. And I think one of our most important jobs is to build other leaders, mentor, coach, bring other leaders along. Don't make it just look good so they think they want it. Be very real with them,
Hmm.
but grow these young leaders into effective leaders.
Yeah. And what would change about our organizations, about our communities, if everybody took on the approach that it's part of my mission to develop the people around me
Yeah,
in ways that are to their benefit in
that's
these
it.
skills of communication and these skills of difficult conversations in the ways that we build trust. What would it look like if walking down the street you saw that impact shared by neighbors, and not
100%.
just for work, but yeah, I love the lesson you learned early on. Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing it today too.
let's build more leaders.
Build more leaders. So
Thank you, Jeremiah.
you're welcome. What do they do? Each time we talk about these things, we come to the end of the podcast and we talk about what are some pragmatic things people can do.
Yeah, I think if you are a younger person in the workforce, ask more questions before you pass judgment on what leadership is looking like or seems like. Get a little more curious. I'd
Hmm.
encourage you to ask more questions of the leaders that are in your organization and don't just stay there. Ask questions to other leaders in your life, wherever that's from. Leaders, that were maybe in your school that you're still connected to, maybe spiritual leaders in your community, government leaders if you have access to them. Ask around why they care to lead. Stop looking at the kind of the symptoms around the leadership, but get into the more deep, meaningful conversation. Ask these people why they wanted to lead. That was the focus of our previous video series, Driving Leadership. We wanted to demystify leadership. And so we did 2 years series of videos, one video every month. So there's 24 videos out there for you folks to watch. And we got into just real conversations with leaders and really got to ask them why they cared about leading. You'll hear some really great human stories that just demystify leadership. So I'd ask the younger folks out there to get into some of those conversations.
Yeah.
What would you do, Jeremiah?
Well, I'll speak to the other ones that are listening who are in those positions of management and leadership already. They've been around for a while, maybe the long timers that are in a position where they're looking to fill the role, to build a second. And I would say, are you making it worth it for them? And I mean it. Are you making the compensation value of the position worth it for people to step into that role? Are you giving them that meaningful answer for not just the financial compensation, but are you giving them the meaningful reason, the why this is important to the organization? Why is it impactful for that person that you're seeking out to step into that space of risky responsibility? Because it's a risk to ask them to step into a different, uncomfortable space. And then secondly, how are you preparing them for it now, even before you know who it is? What do you have in place that helps people grow in the skills that you know they'll need moving forward, wherever they lead, wherever they work? What do you have in place to help them move into that role? Own the responsibility you're in, own the leadership you're in, and answer the important questions of, is this worth it for them? And why would it be if I were them?
Great. Jeremiah, thank you. Thanks for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Looking forward to the next one.
And thanks for listening, folks. We hope you enjoyed this episode and that you're looking forward to more. You can listen to a new podcast 2 times every month here at Get Emergent or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we hope you pick something up you're going to apply directly into your leadership and your work. Let us know how that goes. You can reach out to support@getemergent.com, directly to me, Bill@getemergent.com, or Jeremiah@getemergent.com. Thanks for listening.